What is going on, everybody? And thanks so much again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale. And as always, right beside me, who's got me freaked out today, and we're going to have to talk about it, is Kyle Phils.
How's it going, everybody? Yes, I'm here in Skeleton Studios. A little freaked out.
I was learning some stuff today due to Kyle.
Well, I mean, this is not the guy's first appearance. There's a guy named Jeremy Corbell who, of course, made that amazing documentary, Bob Lazar and the UFOs and stuff, which totally blew me away because I hadn't heard from Bob Lazar since like the 80s, right? And
yeah.
I've read a lot of stuff about him in the books, but when he came back forward and decided to retell his story after like a 30-year hiatus, it kind of freaked me out. And well, now this guy's been on and he's doing another interview, and he's talking about these UFOs and how it's like not even a question if they're real or not. They're definitely real and they'll definitely hear. And I'm kind of freaked out about it because why do people not seem to care?
Yeah, nobody's talking. This isn't big news right now. There's nothing they just come and go, and apparently very frequent. Like it's all the time, all places, right? And
especially under the ocean.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot that they don't want to talk about or reveal. Like they've okayed the revealing of some of the triangle-shaped UFO footage or the stuff that's coming out of the ocean, the TikTok, the David Fravor stuff. They're okay with all that, but for whatever reason, they don't want to talk about the stuff under the water.
Yeah, they're putting the brakes on that.
And I don't know why, so that kind of freaks me out because maybe there's a lot of them under there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it just seems like people are more worried about what Joe Biden's doing this week. People are more worried about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard or how to choreograph the latest TikTok dance. But shouldn't you be worried about not how you can't water your lawn more than 3 times a week because of water restrictions? Like, but there's about aliens everywhere. But like we were talking about off air.
I guess it's their worry. You can worry about whatever you want to. I'm just telling you that I'm worried about aliens.
I'm a little worried myself. I mean, how could you not be? But like we were talking before we got on the air, is like they must not have the ability to destroy us, or they don't have the want to, because they would have done it already, right?
I would think so, yeah.
I mean, I know all the theories out there that it's us coming back in time or just they're watching, but a lot of this new information that's coming out is like whenever there's something going on with nuclear warheads, or the transport of them or whatever, these things kind of show up. So it's like they're really concerned or just really entertained, like when you watch a little kid light a black cat firework. Like they just want to see what we're doing. Or perhaps they're like really advanced in one area but not in another, and they're like trying to steal some of our technology.
Either way, it's unsettling. And in knowing the stories of the alleged craft that they have, like there's a lot of craft that apparently America has as well as other countries, and knowing that one of the stories is they found it during an archaeological dig. Yeah. And we hear all these things. It's you start finding all this like, man, maybe they have been around here a long, long, long time.
Well, some new information that Jeremy released was that, like, in particular, talking about crashes, he says that he doesn't believe that any of them were crashed. That everybody that's had them, they were found pristine, almost as if they were left here on purpose for us to find them.
Or traded or given.
Yeah.
Like given as gifts.
Man, speaking of gifts, Luke, the new Prey dropped.
Yep.
This morning, and I have not seen it. I know you've seen it.
I watched it.
And Luke has seen it because I had to go to work, and Luke was supposed to wait for me to get home.
Nope.
We're going to have popcorn, watch it together because we're the two big Predator fans. No. He went ahead and watched it while I was at work because I came home and he was like, yo, man, you got to check this out. And so how was it? I mean, I know Luke liked it, but what is your opinion?
Of course, I love it. I really, there's a few scenes in there that I don't care for just because it's so CGI'd. And
with the bear and stuff?
Well, yeah, there's some of that. But, I mean, you'll see. I mean, because your eyes will pick up. The uncanny valley shakes it out of you, and all that. Where it would have been better, and I understand with the bear and things, but there was parts of it that would have been better, I think, if it would have been an actual, like, man in a suit.
Yeah.
Instead of CGI'd. And I'll tell you something else that I like. I really like I wish they would have stayed with the old school version of how he's, like, invisible. It looks cooler, like in the original Predator. But I will say, other than that, it's just me being a picky, grumpy old man, right? Because I like the old school stuff. But I will say it's awesome. And it ties into others and the whole thing. It's great. I hope they continue this. I hope it's a big hit and they continue it along this way. But you're going to love it. You going to watch it tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to watch it tonight.
Okay, you're going to have to tell me what you think about that whole thing. And I got something to drop on you, Brad.
Okay.
Have you ever been to Wisconsin?
I have not.
Me either. I'd like to go. Well, I thought I would like to go until this stumbled out here in front of us, folks. 2 werewolf encounters in Camp Douglas and Fort McCoy, Wisconsin.
Why are all the werewolves seen in Wisconsin? I mean, that's where Bray Road is, right?
It is a very wolfy place.
Yeah.
Says, my mother is certain that there is some kind of monster that resembles a werewolf in the Camp Douglas, Fort McCoy region of Wisconsin. When the decade of the 1990s came to a close, Mom and her boyfriend were traveling between Tama and Sparta on the frontage road that ran parallel to the highway. It was a night in the autumn when the moon was full. I refer to it as a frontage road, but due to the presence of trees, it is not often visible from the adjacent freeway. They see what they believe to be a very enormous guy emerge from the forest on all fours and make a successful jump over the chain link fence and barbed wire that surrounds the military installation. This walled off area that's supposed to surrounded by a fence and has a sign indicating what it is, and it's an army base, so it's not like somebody stumbled upon it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like this is what they know, and it has a stone entry. It says this monster jumped over the chain link barbed wire fence and vanished into the forest.
But they thought it was a man on all fours who jumped over the fence.
Like a big guy on all fours come out.
Like that would be strange enough. You don't even have to get to the wolf part. Like that's strange.
That's just
And
creepy.
do you really need a sign? I mean, if I come up to a 9-foot privacy fence with razor wire and stuff, I'm assuming don't go in, right? You don't need the sign.
It's not inviting.
Do you just go around just scaling fences for the heck of it?
Do I look like I'm built to scale a fence?
Yeah.
Maybe crawl under one. Now, this is wild. After the jump, it said it had ears similar to those of a human, but more like those of a dog. Now, they don't stop, and when they see whatever it is, they freak out, and they ask other passengers whether they saw it. Goes on, that was it. But 5 years later, this person says my dad's cousin, who had never met my mother due to the fact that the family was, fractured apart, was telling me about the time he and his girlfriend had been on the frontage road while traveling out to look at a house they were interested in buying. It was becoming dark during the winter. They go quite near the stone entryway right there by it. And it says there's something perched over it. They stop, they look down before they continue, and they claim what they saw was a werewolf on its haunches on the stone wall staring directly at them.
Yeah, nope. Just tell the realtor we're not buying this house.
We're out. Yeah. So they drove by it, and in the exact same place, not knowing the story from this person's mother, they see a werewolf, or they tell them, hey, look, you ain't going to believe what we saw. Goes on, says the wife, get a load of this stuff here. It says it seems to be considering what they say is chasing them. They say it pins its ears back like it's going to take off. The wife starts screaming. Nothing happens. They just punch it, take off. They continue on their way. So they never look back, and they don't go back. They don't come home back that way. It says what really gets under my skin is that the 2 sightings took place years apart, and a total of at least 6 adults witnessed this. Some of them, in my opinion, would absolutely adore to be able to state that they witnessed anything similar to this, but not all of them are open to these ideas, right? Like, they wouldn't. It says, in spite of this, when I needed to drive to Fort McCoy to obtain my CAC, and the group of us from my work got lost en route to that forested region, I couldn't help but start looking into the trees for werewolves.
Wow.
So what would that be? It's one thing to have a story given to you from your family, right?
Yeah.
That's one deal. And you're like, look, we saw something. We thought, like you said, a huge man jump over this fence. And maybe this fence isn't tall. Like maybe they don't talk about how big it is.
Right. That's true. I'm assuming
so it could
it's
like
military
a 4
base,
strand or
probably.
I'm with you. And it gets over it, whatever's going on. And I don't know. And if y'all live up there by it, let us know how tall it is. If it's, I'm sure. But what are the odds that years apart, then they see what people refer to as a werewolf? Now, let's just say it was a dog. Well, what dog just perches up on a wooden fence? I mean, a stone fence or a stone entryway? Or I've never seen it done before.
Listen,
here we go.
Is Wisconsin just overrun with werewolves? Do you think it's like a lineage? Like it's the same family that's been seen on Bray Road? No matter where it is, it's like one small pocket. There's only like 20 of them, say. They just keep getting seen. Or are there hundreds of them, and they're everywhere, and they're in every state? Man, what is it about Wisconsin?
I don't know. Maybe
I don't want to. You asked me if I've ever been there. No, and no, I don't want to go.
Yeah, we're going.
They got cheese here.
Yeah. We need to go. We need to go up there and check it out.
Well, check this
That's
out.
when I go fish Wisconsin.
You got a pretty cool story here.
Yeah.
It says, my cousin and I were in our early 20s when we met up for our family's annual camping trip on a tiny remote lake up in Lassen County, California. As usual, our families had the lake nearly to ourselves, as most people went to a nearby, more popular lake, Lake Almanor? I don't know how you say it. There are no cultivated hiking trails on this lake, so we decided to follow a creek that fed into the lake near our campsite, thinking we wouldn't get lost that way. We first crossed a meadow, then began to follow the creek up the mountainside, which was densely forested with pine. A ways up, we soon came across the tangled, uprooted root system of a big fallen tree. It rested right on the creek side, and my cousin and I, both lovers of all things Brian Froud and Tolkien, remarked that it looked like the home of a forest gnome, maybe a guardian of the forest. Jokingly, we waved at it and said thanks to our imaginary gnome for letting us enter his forest. A little ways further, I realized I'd been hearing a kind of rhythmic sound for a long time that seemed to come far off in the forest. It was a slow, dull, steady beat, like someone hitting a drum. I asked my cousin, who lived in a small mountain town near Yosemite, what might be making that sound like that, especially all the way out here? She thought for a while, and then she said she wasn't sure. It didn't sound like loggers, or animals, or hikers, or anything else that she could think of. Well, we shrugged it off and just kept hiking up the hill. We fell quiet then for a long time, just plodding along. The sound continued and seemed to slowly grow louder. Or closer, we couldn't tell. I looked out into the forest on either side, but all I could see were trees in all directions. The sound made me uneasy, a bit anxious, but we decided to continue. I was also feeling a bit tired, but not in the normal way a hike wears you out. My thinking was kind of foggy, and everything began to feel dreamlike. I looked over my shoulder thinking, man, it looks kind of foggy. And everything began to feel, like I said, like a dream. I looked over at my cousin and she seemed kind of spaced out too. I asked her if we were at a high altitude. She said it wasn't particularly high where we were, so she still hadn't gone too far from the lake. I told her I felt kind of funny. And she said, yeah, I do too. But we just kept hiking. The drumming became noticeably louder. It was coming from all around us in the same steady, dull beat. It had a kind of droning quality, and soon I could begin to feel it vibrating in my ears, thudding alongside my heart, inside my body. That was when things began to feel very weird. I no longer felt uneasy, but instead I felt this deep peace, like I wasn't asleep and dreaming. I kept putting one foot in front of the other and climbing the mountain, but it was like I was in a trance, not making the decision consciously to continue, but instead being drawn upwards. We kept walking in total silence for a long time, that sound pounding and getting louder and louder. We reached a place where a waterfall tumbled down from a large rock ledge, maybe 6 feet overhead. It was an easy walk up and around to get to the next tier of the creek, but I stopped. My cousin stopped near me. In a daze, we looked at the beautiful pool at the foot of the falls. It was dripping with ferns and moss, and the bottom was formed by small, colorful stones. The beat was faster now. It was close and enveloping, but seeming to still come from nowhere. I looked at the falls and felt an intense longing to walk above them, to continue on forever up the mountain and see all the beauty beyond. We were still for such a long time, until finally my cousin said, I think if we keep going, we don't ever get to come back. When I looked at her, I knew I felt the same thing, and I felt a splash of adrenaline. We turned and started back down the mountain. As we descended, the foggy feeling began to clear. The beat began to fade, and I felt more and more the urgent need to get away. Finally awake, I was covered in goosebumps and was leaping and tripping over things to go as fast as I could. We passed the big root system and both spontaneously said, "Thank you," and started giggling nervously. As we finally hit the meadow, we started to relax and I laughed, and I said something like, "Wow, We really have big imaginations. Finally, we crossed the meadow and stopped to turn around and look back. Just as we did this, we heard a loud, sharp, unmistakable snap sound that echoed down the mountain, emanating from exactly where we had been. Every hair on my body stood up, and I knew, we both knew, that if we hadn't turned around at the waterfall, we would never have left that mountain again. We ran back to camp as fast as we could go. AC. So this is like so many of these other stories where people claim that like the Fae are trying to trick them in deeper into the woods, right? Like the stories of the Puckwudgies.
That wasn't a snap. That was a slamming door. That was the Fae closed the door so you couldn't come in.
You know, and I know that it's been brought up several times from listeners and other people that some of the people that are missing and missing 411. Actually people that are like, were taken to fairyland or wherever. But what a bizarre sound. And this is like, what a coincidence too, because like I think this is the second story in just like the last 2 months where somebody's talking about this phantom drumming sound.
Yep.
So whether you hear phantom drumming or the sound of like small pipes playing and stuff, don't go in there, folks.
That's right.
It's not an ice cream man selling stuff. There's no food truck in those woods. They're trying to lure you in.
You've been reading Joshua's books?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a run. We just talked to him. You've been reading the books and looking into it. It's dangerous.
Well, yeah, it seems like we've been doing a lot of Fae stuff for whatever reason.
Because we love it.
Well, let's take a break, and when we get back from the break, I'm going to be talking about some strange aquatic humanoids. Stick with us, folks. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. And we are back with Expanded Perspectives. Hope everybody out there is having a good day. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know that water cryptids are probably my least favorite when it comes to monsters, and I don't know why. But even under that realm of creatures, it's the ones that I don't like are the Nessie ones, the Loch Ness monsters, these plesiosaurs, ancient dinosaurs living in lakes and rivers. For whatever reason, I don't like those near as much. Now, when it comes to aquatic creatures that aren't like the Nessie type or ancient dinosaurs, I am interested in those, like real sightings of mermaids. I think that's a fantastic idea. And I like the thought that these things could possibly exist out there. And I hope they do, because I like the stories. It got me to thinking, because I was, if you're listening to this, I have just about ready to go to Galveston, or just north of Galveston, actually Crystal Beach, which is between Galveston and Port Arthur. And when I was thinking about this trip, I started thinking about the water, right? And getting ready to go swimming and fishing and all that, which led me to wanting to talk about some crazy water creatures. So that's what I'm going to be covering. Now, the ocean, it can be an unforgiving place. I mean, there's riptides and strong currents, and unfortunately, lots of swimmers drown every year because of these riptides. It's a scary thing. You know, if you get pulled out, don't fight the current, parallel the beach for a while. It'll eventually subside, and then you can swim to safety. But people freak out, and there's tragic tales all the time of just people drowning, trying to save a loved one or friend or something because of these riptides. But also the monsters that live in the ocean, you know, like great white sharks. Shark Week is currently going on, and it doesn't take much to watch that, and you'll see some kind of horrific creature from the depths with giant teeth. Long ago, though, when sailors, when they would go for long voyages, they would sometimes go insane. And so some of the things they reported, it's not sure if they were hallucinations or whether they really saw them. Also, there's legends in certain areas of the world where children who disobeyed their parents would slip into the water without ever struggling or splashing before they drowned. It was almost as if something had captured their will to live. Now, in the Solomon Islands, they blamed this on a creature they called the Adaro. And this creature's face and upper body looked like a man without hair on his head, kind of like me, and black eyes. It was all gray with a shark-like tail and breathed underwater through gills behind its ears. Kind of like Kevin Costner did in Waterworld. Remember that movie? That was a good movie. According to the legend, the Adaro would wait for people to fall into the water. If someone had sinned a lot, the Adaro would suck out all of the good parts of their personality, or shade, only leaving behind the darkest side of humanity. Christians in the Solomon Islands transformed this traditional legend to fit in with the Bible, saying that the Adaro are really nothing more than fallen angels or demons. But to other parts of the globe, what about Russia? According to Russian mythology, the Rusaliki, or the Rusalaka, were beautiful, young, naked women who emerged from the water in order to spread moisture to the fields and give life to earth. Now, these were not mermaids, but female water spirits who were once living human beings. And in the early legends, it was told that these were the ghosts of women who drowned from committing suicide due to grief from the death of a child or husband. Now, the Rusalki, or Rusalka, were once depicted as beautiful, helpful female spirits who would sometimes even sing as they worked. They would giggle and brush their hair by the edge of the water. In later years, stories and artwork about the Rusalki transformed them into zombies, emerging from their watery graves. Even later, other legends focused more on women who were murdered and dumped in lakes and rivers. The zombie Rusalki would emerge from the water to walk on land and take revenge on the men who killed them. That's crazy, right? How many women are being murdered and dumped in lakes and rivers? I don't know. Russia, even to this day, seems like a really scary place. What about the Yakaruna? Have you ever heard of the Yakaruna? The indigenous people, from where else but the Amazon rainforest, believed in aquatic creatures called the Yakaruna. Now, these were people that lived in underwater cities, which were like reflections of life on land. So everything was upside down. Their places were made of crystal, and they were decorated with shining pearls and fish scales. The Yakaruna rode on the backs of snakes, crocodiles, and turtles for transportation. A Yakaruna resembled a human, except that the head, hands, and feet were on backward. Others claimed that these humanoids simply had webbed hands, feet, and had green skin. Legend says that if a human was ever captured by the Yakaruna, they would begin to transform into one, starting with their eyes rolling backward. A shaman would have to reverse the curse before it was too late. Some believed that the Yakaruna were an advanced civilization and that they were the source of the shaman's medical knowledge. In one particular story, a man named Don Juan Flores Salazar witnessed his little sister drown when they were children. Later in life, he had a vision of her as an adult, standing by the water's edge. She told him that she was alive and had married a Yakaruna man. She returned to give him knowledge of healing. Salazar went on to have a career as a shaman. We talk about faith folk all the time. What about Finn folk? In Scotland and Ireland, stories of Finn folk were a big part of the local folklore. During the winter, the Finn folk, they say, lived in a city at the bottom of the ocean called Finn Folkaheme. In the summer, they lived on an island called Hildeland, which could appear and disappear at will, making it impossible for humans to find. It was believed that the Finn folk could take on the form of a beautiful man or woman in order to lure humans into the water. They were shapeshifters who could transform from a full fish to a full human or somewhere in between, like a mermaid. It was believed that these Finn folk wanted to have sex with humans because it was like their elixir for a long life. Whenever a boat never returned home from a voyage or someone drowned, it was always blamed on the Finn folk. After the rise of Christianity, priests began to claim that so long as a village practiced the Bible and spoke the word of God, Finn folk could not step on dry land. Wow, that's crazy, right? Crazy stories. Moving on, have you ever heard of the umibozu? Now, sailing at sea during the night can be a frightening experience. I can only imagine, even when conditions are calm. But during a storm, large waves can easily capsize a boat. According to the Japanese legend, sailors would sometimes glance over calm waters at night and see a giant black shadow in the shape of, not Godzilla, the shape of a bald man. They called this the umibozu, which literally translates to sea monk. They took this as an omen that even though the waters looked calm, at the moment, there was a storm coming, and it was best not to set sail. Other accounts of the umibozu tell stories of ships on calm seas that were suddenly dragged down. They witnessed this black figure from the shore. Now modern theorists believe that the legend might have originated from the real-life phenomenon of rogue waves. Sometimes the wind can create a giant wave just literally out of the middle of nowhere, even if the conditions appear calm. At night, from a distance, this can resemble the outline of a person. This only happens when a storm is on its way, so the story is kind of actually true. What about monkfish or bishopfish? In Denmark and Poland, sailors and fishermen would report sightings of a fish with a human-looking face. The top of its head was shaped like a bishop's hat, and its body looked like it was wearing a cloak. Now, most of the accounts date back to the 1500s, when there was so much still unknown of marine biology, and even stories of large whales were considered to be folklore. The creatures known as monkfish and bishopfish both have similar features. According to one story, fishermen captured a monkfish, and they were so convinced that it was a holy man of the sea that they took it to church, hoping to get some reaction out of it. Of course, it never spoke a word. The monkfish became a cryptozoological creature, and illustrations made it out to be very human-like. In modern times, there's actually a genus of fish called Lophius, which is still nicknamed monkfish. Monkfish have very large mouths with a pink inside that resembles a human tongue. They also have eyes in the front of their heads, similar to a human face. What about the Aipu piara? Yeah, that's right, that's a mouthful. The Aipu piara is a legendary South American sea monster that was covered in hair and had a very bushy mustache. It was said to kill sailors off the coast of Brazil by choking them to death with its hands. Yeah, of course, they knew jiu-jitsu. Then it would eat their eyeballs, as well as the tips of their fingers, toes, and even genitals. During the 1500s, explorers claimed to have killed the Aipu piara by thrusting a sword into its belly. They sold the corpse to a Danish physician named Thomas Bartholin. He examined the body and confirmed that the creature had the head and torso of a very hairy man, but the bottom extremities were like a fish. The corpse was put on display in his cabinet of curiosities. Modern-day theorists believe that the Aipu piara may have been a man with a deformity called sirenomelia, where a person's legs are fused together that resemble a fish's tail. At the time, it was not uncommon for parents of disabled children to just leave them for dead. It is possible that the child had become feral, or it was just an elaborate hoax. Note that babies with sirenomelia rarely survive more than a day or two. Now, in Slavic legends, the Vadyanoi was the guardian spirit of the water. He's described as an old man who has control over every aquatic creature. If humans treated the water with respect, they would be rewarded with fish to eat and valuable pearls. The Vadyanoi rode around a water horse that was actually a catfish. In illustrations of the Vadyanoi, his body is human-like, but with webbed hands. He has the head of a frog with a human nose. His beard drips with algae and slime, and stories say that he could shapeshift into a man if he ever wanted to. In fact, he was said to enjoy human food so much that ancient people gave him meals as an offering. As a shapeshifter, he could leave the water in order to satisfy his cravings. However, anyone could pick a Vadyanoi out of a crowd of people because, as legend is told, their left butt cheek was constantly dripping water. What a crazy legend, right? And these legends, they're from all over the globe, different places all over. But, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what are these people seeing? Moving to a particular sighting I think you're going to like. Check this out. On August 21st, 1955, a woman named Miss Darwin Johnson and her friend, a Miss Chris Lamble, were reportedly swimming on the Ohio River near Evansville, Indiana, on a clear and calm summer's day, when they encountered something rather bizarre to say the very least. At some point during the relaxing swim, Johnson apparently suddenly had difficulty swimming and began thrashing about in a panic in the water, as if something was intentionally pulling her down. Something had latched onto her and was dragging her underwater. Now Lamble looked on in horror as her friend clutched at the water and gasped for air. And Johnson apparently once managed to break free from whatever it was that was yanking on her leg, which would later be described as a scaly, clawed hand, only to be pulled down yet again as she desperately screamed for help. Lamble furiously splashed her way across the water in her inner tube in an effort to reach her terrified, drowning friend. As she approached, the mysterious assailant then released its grip and sank away into the murky depths of the river. Once on shore, Johnson displayed gashes and bruises on her leg, consistent with powerful claws, as well as a green palm print of a massive hand etched upon her flesh, which could apparently not be washed off for several days. Now, while neither of the women had gotten a good look at the vicious mystery beast, they both seemed to agree it had been a very large fish or fish-like humanoid of some sort, but very much like the beast depicted in the 1954 film, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, one of Luke's favorites. But this wasn't the end of this crazy story, or this sighting. There was an investigator, a guy named Terry Colvin, who interviewed the women years later and found that they had been visited soon after the incident by a mysterious individual identifying himself only as an Air Force colonel. He questioned them and advised them against talking about it with anybody else. Now, of course, you have to ask, why would the women be visited by the men in black? And how do these men in black always seem to know when someone has a sighting? Just what was it that tried to drag Johnson down to her death? And why was that colonel snooping around and telling them to remain quiet about the whole deal? No one seems to know. Check out, that's not the only crazy sighting that's happened in the Ohio River area. No, in October of 1975, at the portion of the river that runs across the northern boundary of Milton, Kentucky, described by cryptozoologist Loren Coleman, he said one witness, a guy named Clarence Gable, claimed that there was a massive frog-like creature lurking in the area of his junkyard. The creature was described as having bulging eyes, a forked tongue, and as being a dull white color with black and white stripes. Kind of sounds like Admiral Akbar from Star Wars. Remember that guy? It says other witnesses around the same time would see the same or similar looking creature around the Ohio River at Trimble County, Kentucky, and say it was some sort of bipedal and amphibious lizard-like beast. But that wasn't the only sighting. In March of 1959, witnesses Michael Lane, Wayne Armstrong, and Dennis Patterson claimed they sighted a green-eyed, 7-foot-tall, seemingly armless humanoid at Charles Mill Lake in Mansfield, Ohio. They said whatever this thing was, it left behind some tracks that looks like the flippers of scuba divers. It was seen again in 1963. And one of the major deals that stood out was these luminous green eyes. Now, perhaps the most well-known of the tales of such a beast in the area is that has what become known as the Loveland frog, of course, of Loveland, Ohio. Now, one of the earliest accounts of this frog-like mystery monster comes from May of 1955, when a businessman was traveling down a remote rural road along the Little Miami River in Claremont County. That's Miami, Ohio, not Florida, near the town of Loveland. As the witness approached the bridge at around 3:30 a.m., he says that he saw 3 bipedal, frog-like creatures measuring around 3 to 4 feet tall in height, gathered under the bridge. He says the strange beasts were described as being somewhat reptilian in appearance, with webbed hands and webbed feet. They had thick, leathery-looking skin and frog-like heads, and they had lots of wrinkles all over their body, as well as having wide, lipless mouths. One of the mystery beasts then allegedly raised its arm to produce a bar, or rod, or wand, or something like that. And it said that this thing emanated sparks and a pungent odor of alfalfa and almonds. This insane encounter would spark the famous Loveland frogman. But this wasn't the only sighting. This would begin a whole series of sightings of the Loveland frogman. Again, in March 1972, the bizarre frogman would make an appearance again when it was reported that it was spotted near Loveland by an Ohio police officer, identified as a guy named Ray Shockey. As he was driving his cruiser along East Kemper Road, which winds along with the Little Miami River, this creature was described as, again, bipedal, around 4 foot tall, with rough, leathery skin, and it had a face and head like a frog or a lizard. The officer explained that he saw it leap over a railway to apparently jump into the Little Miami River. A later explanation of the scene turned up strange-looking scratch marks on the handrail that the thing reportedly jumped over. But other than that, there was no other evidence found. 2 weeks after that sighting, it was seen again, this time by another police officer. This guy's name was Mark Matthews. Now, in this case, the creature was spotted lying on a rural road on the outskirts of Loveland. The witness, the cop, supposedly at first look thought it was a dead animal on the road, some roadkill. But when he got out of his cruiser to investigate, this thing allegedly stood up. It crouched down on the road before walking over to the guardrail while intently watching the witness. It was described again as a frog-like bipedal creature, again 4 foot in height. This time, a tail was clearly visible. And the startled police officer then took a shot at it with his sidearm, but missed the beast, and it scurried off into the night. He probably was scared to death. In later years, Matthews would begin to doubt what he had seen, and he started to claim that it must have been some kind of exotic pet, some exotic reptile pet that had escaped from its owner. But that still doesn't make any sense. None of this does. How could someone's lost iguana be confused with something upright and walking around, right? An investigation by a group called Weird Ohio in 2001 interviewed a local named Ron Schaffner about the possible reason. And this is what he says, and I quote him. He says, "Why after all these years is Matthews debunking the story? I'm not sure. Could be a number of reasons. Both officers told us that it resembled the sketch that was drawn in 1976. Why would they show us a composite drawing of a creature back in 1976 and tell us that it looked like the drawing? I lived in Loveland for about 5 years, and the story is still circulating with many variations. Just maybe, Matthews is tired of hearing the story and all the variations." So, even to this day, if you go to that area of Ohio, people talk about the frogman. And some of the stories, it's off by itself, and then one of the stories, it was a group of 3. Are there these crazy cryptid creatures living out there, or were they extraterrestrials, or was it just a mass hallucination? I don't know. Very, very cool. Check this out. In the Kei Islands during World War II, there was these Japanese soldiers, and they were stationed in a 555 square mile area in the Kei Islands in Indonesia. They had some strange encounters with what they claim were mermaids. Now, the local villagers were familiar with these creatures, they claimed, and they called them orang-ikan, which translates to manfish. Now, the creatures were described as being around 150 centimeters tall and having spikes on their spine, shoulders, and neck. They were said to have pink, salmon-colored skin and a mouth that resembled, get this, folks, a carp. Rather than having a fishtail, these creatures had long arms and frog-like legs, both of which had talons at the end. Now, these Japanese soldiers recorded many different sightings, saying they even saw some on land, suggesting that they were amphibious, but mostly seemed at home in the water. One instance, a troop of soldiers claimed to be exploring some unseen land and came upon a natural lagoon. Everything seemed normal until there was sudden thrashing in the water. Suddenly, an orang-ikan jumped out of the water onto a nearby rock. It slowly turned and faced the soldiers and let out a gurgling, burping noise that didn't seem to be friendly. Then they saw another creature moving smoothly in the water toward them, as fast as any fish could. Now, not knowing the intentions of these creatures, or even what these creatures were, the soldiers naturally started shooting at the rocks and into the water, only to have the creatures disappear from view. Now, a sergeant named Mr. Taro spoke to the villagers and requested if any of the orang-ikan were captured dead or alive to contact him immediately. It was soon after that the chief summoned the general, and to his astonishment, saw with his own eyes the lifeless aquatic creature. He describes what he saw as roughly 4 foot 9 inches tall. This thing had pinkish skin. It had human-looking face and limbs. It had spikes along its head and a mouth like a carp. Now, Mr. Taro Horiyaba made his best efforts after the war to get the scientific community involved. Yet, unfortunately, nothing ever happened. So, were there mermaids living in Indonesia during World War II? I don't know. Pretty cool. Check this one out. This comes from British Columbia in 1967. Now, how crazy would it be to see a real mermaid just lounging on the beach for hundreds of eyes to see? Now, the social media exposure would undoubtedly capture every moment and may make it really easy to debunk any fakers. That was not the case, though, back in 1967, near the main islands of British Columbia. The story goes, a ferry filled with tourists spotted a blonde-haired mermaid sitting topless on the beach. She was eating a salmon fish and enjoying the waves splash up on her. One witness said she was attractive and had dimples. There was one photo taken of the event, which does show a blonde woman with the lower half of a porpoise. But I've never seen that photo. A similar incident happened later that week with a mermaid spotted. By that time, there were plenty of skeptics who didn't believe she was real. Charles White from the Undersea Gardens financed a $25,000 reward for this mermaid's capture, and even offered room and board with special combs for the mermaid's pleasure. This may sound odd, but the company was desperate to prove her existence. Unfortunately, the story died soon after, which tells me that it probably wasn't real. What about in Hawaii, 1998, the island of Kailua Kona? Now, Hawaii has plenty of folklore and legends around beautiful aquatic creatures. But in 1998, a diver named Liker claimed he got the first ever documented proof that mermaids do exist. Now, Liker operates the Jack Diving Locker of Kauai and was 20 minutes off the coast of Kauai when he saw what looked like a nude woman swimming with a pod of dolphins. Now, not only was she swimming with the dolphins, but she could keep up with them, which means she could swim really fast. This woman was able to keep pace with the dolphins, which, of course, Liker thought that was odd. All of a sudden, he claims, she jumps into the air and realizes, that's when he realizes, that she has the lower half of a fish. Now, 10 people on the boat claim that they saw this happen, but the mermaid disappeared just after 2 jumps out of the water. Now, you might think that this is the end of the story, but an hour later, as Liker was photographing some underwater life, that same mermaid brushed up against him while swimming and turned back around just in time for him to snap a few pictures. He says, I feel very lucky that I'm the one who finally proves to the world what people have known around here for a half century. The Kauai Point mermaid is real. Now, I've taken a look at some of these photos. You can type this in, K-A-I-W-I, Point mermaid. Look for some of the photographs. I think it could be faked pretty easily, but I don't know. You'd have to be the judge. But there's more sightings. And if you keep going on and on, there's sightings in Israel. There's sightings in Zimbabwe. They're everywhere. So, I've even read the stories where people say, oh, it was old sailors and what they were seeing were manatees or porpoises, something like that. And they thought they were mermaids. But I'm telling you, I've seen manatees. They don't look like a woman. It does not look like a woman swimming. They don't look like they have hair. They don't, nothing. I don't believe that all those sailors were confusing manatees for women swimming under the water. So the question is, are mermaids real? Are these aquatic creatures, these aquatic humanoids, are they real? Are they still out there? Or was there a time when they were real, but they're not any longer? And so that's why all these tales and legends keep going on and on and on. I don't know. I don't really care for plesiosaurs or, champ, these dinosaur sightings in lakes and locks and rivers. But for whatever reason, man, you hit me with a good mermaid story or a frogman story. I'm really into it. Let's take a break. Stick with us, folks. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. And we're back with Expanded Perspectives. Strange stories, strange sightings. I have no answers for anybody out there that's wondering. I don't know what these things are. Giant frogs walking around, mermaids, just aquatic humanoids. Strange things that people see in water.
I'm going to put you on the spot real quick.
Sure.
How do you think, would you react differently, you think, if you saw Bigfoot as compared to if you saw some sort of mer person?
Yeah. I think I would be kind of scared of Bigfoot, where if I saw a mermaid, I don't think I would be frightened. I'd be like, wow, that's really cool.
Do you think does it make more sense to see Bigfoot, or does it make more sense to see a mer person?
I think it makes more sense to see Bigfoot. I think that the possibility of a North American ape is way more plausible than a Aquaman who breathes air through water and swims around in the ocean. I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think it's less likely. Now, there's lots of famous stories, and some of them I told, but perhaps that one time they were a real thing.
Yeah.
Because there is the aquatic ape theory.
Yep, we've covered that one.
And I may retouch on that, where we didn't evolve from apes. We actually evolved from something from the sea.
Or we were just in the water. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff to it.
Maybe that tree split, just like there's still gorillas now and there's still Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Or if you're Andrew Collins, Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
But maybe that they split off too and we came up out of the sea and there still was a time where there was mermaids coexisting at the same time. I don't know.
To believe they're still out there. But I want the fantasy realm to be real in this realm too. Except for this. While this was going down, I found you another story to get you to go to Wisconsin with me.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
Pale humanoid. All right. Stalks a National Guardsman at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin.
Now, this Fort McCoy is, man, that spot's popping,
This
right?
thing is banging.
They got werewolves now and pale crawlers?
Exactly. It's going off. This says here that a National Guardsman was stationed at Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, and encountered a pale humanoid crawler. It says, I want to share an experience that I had while training with my National Guard unit at Fort McCoy. I moved from enlisted to officer via ROTC and was attached to a unit in my prospective MOS while in the program. I don't really want to give specifics on my service as the community is small enough to identify me to peers. In 2014, my platoon decided to conduct nighttime land nav at Fort McCoy from 20:30 to 0030. While the Army is typically all about buddy pairs, Nightland Nav is one of the few cases we can do things solo if we so choose. And having done light Nightland navigation plenty before I step off alone, compass, map, and headlamp in hand. For those who do not know, land navigation involves seeking out markers on a course by plotting their coordinates on a map and moving there via terrain reference and compass. At night, this is typically done without light as much as possible. When light is used, it is red. This minimizes damage to night vision. Ostensibly, these methods also keep you concealed in a tactical environment when employed with noise discipline. I bring this up so you can... Noise discipline, folks, is usually suppressed weapons or anything that doesn't make a loud sound. I bring this up so you can understand a few things about my circumstances. I was moving through the woods while making a token effort to be hard to spot and hear. The woodland I was in was part of a larger forest system, but was frequently traveled. That night we had some 15 soldiers clomping around. My illumination was a toggleable headlamp, but was toggled to be red when turned on. To cycle to white, I have to turn it off twice. The cycle was off, solid white, off, flashing white, off, solid red, off, flashing red, off, solid white. My assigned points will take me to the other side of the course and back. A good hour and a half of walking as the crow flies. They're more or less in a straight line, so I estimate 2.5 hours out and back. I know if I come back too early, I might be given another set of points, so I resolve to walk out, take a break for an hour, then mosey on back. The first half of this goes as planned. I get my points without much trouble and wind up sitting on a hillside at around 10 o'clock at night. It's cloudy, but the moon's full. I can see well when the sky is clear, poorly when it's not. Occasionally, I see a red light bobbing in the distance below me. Once a pair of platoon members passes down the hill from me, using white light to try to read their map. I startle them when I ask if they needed help. At the end of my break, there's no more motion in my area. Most people had likely already walked out and back, or they were too lost and took the hand railing road home. I'm feeling, pretty good at one of my surroundings and feeling, happily here, having sat in the same spot, eating stale Skittles for a good long while, owls hooting, trees swaying, and of course all is well. So I trot down my hill to step through some brush, and I'm in a clearing where the prairie intersects the forest. And there's some dead trees in the area, and one of them has a split about halfway up. At the top, which is more or less 15 feet or so, I can make out a head and shoulders silhouetted against the clouds, backlit by the moon. So I walk up to ask how they got up there and if they're stuck, when the shadow twitches, and I get the impression
that it's not human.
It's turned towards me.
Oh, okay.
So I stand there looking at it, and it's maybe looking at me. The situation feels off. Now, I'm not going to let a battle buddy punk me, so I ask if they need a hand. Mid-sentence, the moonlight comes back. It's clear the thing on the tall stump is not a soldier. The moonlight glimpses is the best look I can get at this thing. It looks like a stretched out bald person. Its long arms are clutching the stump. I can't see or make out the face, but it looks pinched. And by that I mean I couldn't see its eyes or mouth, like they were small in the middle of its face.
I'll tell you, it would be pinched by a noose.
100%,
I saw that, right?
It's skinny like it hasn't eaten, but it's tall and obviously strong to have made such a vertical climb. It was definitely facing me. It probably was the whole time I was in the clearing, and maybe since I came down the hill. But it's startled by my speech. So I swear loudly. It rapidly scurries down the trunk. I flick on my red light and catch it on all fours, moving towards the brush line in the direction I'm heading. Automatically.
Was heading.
Right? Automatically, I keep toggling the lamp to be in the white light. That means it goes off, then to flash in red. In the flash, I see the thing at the wood line, but I think it's flipped around and is backing in, probably to keep eyes on me. In the few seconds it takes for me to get the solid white light, it's gone. So I scan the tree line, which is silent. When it moved there, it was making a scraping noise, plus the woodland brush is very dense. If it was still running, I would hear it. I reason that it must have stopped. It must still be watching me. I fumble out my knife and keep looking around the woods in front of me, and after ages, I start inching along a perpendicular path to my initial route of travel, an angle that will link me up with the hardball road that runs up and down the side of the course. Once in the road, I can take it back to where my platoon is parked. My major problem is that road is 10 minutes of walking away from my current position, mostly wooded. That can't be helped. I have to get out of this clearing first. My progress on that front is painfully slow. I'm fighting my natural urge to freeze in place like a deer in the headlights. After sidestepping a good 10 meters, I hear a corresponding rustle, and I think I see movement. It's enough to get me to turn and bolt right into a downed log, which trips me. I scramble up to my feet and look back to the wood line where there is an audible commotion. I glimpse a leg and an ass moving back into the woods. At this point, I'm done with the whole situation, but I don't want to run again. I start power walking down the road, turning to look as much as I can while seeing what the thing is doing. Over the movement of my own kit, I can hear it moving alongside me, parallel. As I near the end of the clearing, I think I hear it picking up the pace, as if trying to cut me off. I make the decision to sprint. When I enter the woods, my path is clear, but I think I can hear it in my periphery. I don't stop, and I run hard until I hit the paved road. And I bite it a few hard times along the way, but the recovery with a frantic speed I cannot consciously replicate. Once in the road, I run perpendicular to the forest until I don't think I hear it anymore. I'm winded from my breakout run. From the middle of the road, I have good visibility and decide to walk to catch my breath. It's quiet for a while, and then I hear a branch move around 30 foot in the air from the woods I had just fled. I snap my gaze up and I see a pale, ovular face, half in shadow, peeking at me from around the trunk. I take off again. After way too long, I make it back to the headlights of our LMTVs. It's 12:15. What happened, cadet? Did you get lost out there? You're covered in mud, you fall down, and why the hell are you out of breath? I got lost on my way back. I knew better than to claim I saw a monster. Already my reaction had left me feeling foolish. In the years since drilling at FMC, I have never experienced anything like that again. McCoy does not have a history of disappearances. As far as I know, neither do the two closest towns, Sparta and Tama. I've done Nightland Nav alone a few times since without issue. This is less from courage and more from me deciding I must have misinterpreted the whole situation. But maybe the world is weirder than I thought.
Man, so I'm guessing he didn't have a firearm with him?
Probably not.
Because he mentioned pulling a knife.
Yeah, and he said he had his gear, right? But I'm probably not a gun, but maybe he did have it on his back. Who knows? But it doesn't sound like it. Like, it sounds like they were just out doing a little run through instead of really drilling. If they're only going to be gone like 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I don't know that, yeah. So, yeah, there you go. Again, they're at Fort McCoy. So if you've got anything crazy that's gone on at Fort McCoy, holla at you boys. Let us know. Call in, write in. I want to know some more crazy Fort McCoy stories.
Yeah, me too. So please, yeah. Don't forget, before we get out of here, folks, we got an Expanded Perspectives live show coming up. That's going to be October 28th. It's a Friday at 7 p.m. at the Panther Island Brewery. We're going to have special guests there with us that's going to be speaking and, shaking hands and selling merch and just talking with everybody. That's going to be a really good time. If you have a story you'd like to share with me and Cam, you can email the show, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com, or you can call the show, 888-393-2783. That's about all the time we have. Cam, what do you got planned for the rest of your week?
I'm going kayaking this weekend. So
that sounds fun.
I'm going to go kayak a few hours down the river. Me and the wife and my daughter and my son and his lady friend and all that stuff, and a whole bunch of us.
We're going to catch a big gar or something like that?
I think I'm going to go. I wasn't going to take any fishing gear. I was just going to go and just have it. But I think I'm just going to take a spinning reel, throw that in there and go just in case, but not too much popping off.
I think I would actually like to try spearfishing. I mean, I think if it was
like
nice,
standing on the bank?
No, like in the water, but like it's good, clear water. You know what I'm saying? Like in the Bahamas or something.
It's been really good doing the show with you, man.
I didn't say I was doing it. I said I would like to. It looks fun, right?
It does look like a good time. I just don't know if I could hold my stuff together. I've got a guy right now that I've been helping and one I've been talking to, and he is a licensed diver and does a bunch of recovery and stuff. And he offered to teach me, to get me certified to do it all. And I don't know that I can do it.
But what if it was crystal clear water, like where we were at in Orange Beach?
Like
it's
if we were in a
like
pool?
a swimming pool. You can see 30, 40 feet.
But it's not a swimming pool.
Oh, I know. But you can get out if stuff starts. You'll be able to see sharks. They're not going to sneak up on you. What if it was only like 8 feet deep, crystal clear water in the middle of the day? Would you do that?
In a pool?
No, in the ocean.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I'll do it in a pool.
I think I would try it.
But absolutely not.
Because bow fishing's fun. Spear fishing is just bow fishing underwater.
Holding your breath while doing it. You can hold your breath in the boat if it makes you feel better. And you don't have to worry about getting eaten by anything.
Yeah, I mean, it does bother me. I have a big fear of like the unknown, like where it's super dark and you can't see the bottom. I don't like that.
You don't know what's down there?
Yeah, but if it's 8 feet deep and it's crystal clear, I'm like, I'm good.
That is a little unnerving when you're out in like the ocean and it's...
That's the worst part.
Yeah, you're like, how deep is it out here?
You could be in the boat and they'll go, oh, it's 30 feet here, and you don't feel bad. They go, oh, yeah, it's like 40,000 feet. You're like, what? Yeah. Even though that'd be like the deepest part in the world. Yeah. Oh, deeper than the deepest part in the world. But you know what I'm saying.
If they just say, oh, it's like 200, 300 foot here, I panic. I'm like, oh, Jesus.
I know. Why is that?
Because monsters live down there.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this episode, folks. Till next time, I'm Kyle. He's Cam.
Peace, y'all.